By and large, soundtracks are the most overlooked element when trying to figure out whether a series is good or bad, and while I do understand the mentality behind this sentiment since the effects of an OST aren't immediately discernible, I consider the soundtrack to be just as important to a series as the narrative and visual elements. Music is capable of tapping into our most basic and primal senses more effectively than any other entertainment medium. Not only that, but soundtracks even have the potential to convey additional information normally not present in the regular text. And my favorite example of this is Rooster Teeth's foray into the world of animation, RWBY, and its accompanying soundtrack composed by Jeff Williams. RWBY's soundtrack is unique in that while there are quite a few quote-unquote traditional instrumental tracks, an equally sized bulk that serves as the face of the soundtrack is dedicated to more mainstream rock and pop songs, or as those in the anime community would refer to them, insert songs. This isn't exactly a new concept as there are no end to soundtracks that contain a variety of popular hits. What makes RWBY different though is that all of its insert songs were written explicitly for the soundtrack rather than for the purpose of being a chart topper or attempting to popularize a musical artist. Going even further, all of the lyrical songs in RWBY's soundtrack are either explicitly or potently implicitly about the events of the series itself, and they each fall into a wide range of topics and impact the series in different ways. From Shadows, the song played during the Black trailer expertly sums up the core of Blake's character and how she has fought against oppression due to her Faunus heritage, though the series kept the track from spoiling this plot point by not introducing the concept of Faunus until well after the trailer had aired. Tracks can also foreshadow events that might happen later in the series, such as with the quirky love song Boop, which conveys how Ren and Nora are slowly realizing their feelings for each other, which took 2 additional seasons after the track's release to be realized in the series. The soundtrack even has the potential to strike a dual meaning between what's going on in the show and a transcended meta-commentary on the situation surrounding the show's production that could bring closure to fans, such as with the song Cold. However, there are 3 tracks in particular that really show just how powerful this soundtrack can be in adding new levels of richness to the narrative itself, and I want to take some time to analyze these tracks in detail. Unfortunately, due to the recent string of demonetizations amongst YouTubers, I will not be able to provide any audio examples in this video, but I will provide relevant lyrics both in the video and the description as much as possible. The first is a track from the midpoint of Season 1 titled Red Like Roses Part 2, which, as its name implies, is a follow-up track to the one from the Red trailer of similar name. The track from the Red trailer is very sparse on lyrics for the most part, choosing instead to let the action take center stage over an orchestral accompaniment, and the few lyrics it does have are there mostly to set up initial intrigue into the series itself and what each main character's personalities might be like. The most important detail of the Red trailer for this discussion, however, is the fact that RWBY is visiting someone's grave, which we later discover belongs to her mother, Summer Rose. Fast forward to our first mid-season climax, and Red Like Roses Part 2 makes its debut in the midst of the most epic and action-oriented scene of the season, with the characters that would later make up teams RWBY and Juniper squaring off against the Nevermore. What makes this track stand out though, aside from just being a really awesome rock song, is the fact that it's actually a duet between the main singer, Casey Lee Williams, and her mother, Sandy Casey, and based on the lyrics of the song, the parallels to RWBY and Summer Rose are plain to see. Casey's lines portray a young child left behind in a world of strife, while Sandy's convey the opposite perspective of a parent forced to leave her child behind due to her own death, with this narrative reaching its climax in the song's bridge. What makes this track interesting is that the feelings conveyed in this song have not been explicitly discussed in the series so far. The most we've ever gotten about RWBY's relationship with Summer is her brief and awkward monologue to Summer's grave at the start of Season 3. It's still up in the air whether we'll see a more explicit relationship between the two, but I kind of prefer it the way it is now because Red Like Roses Part 2 has already told us the entire story. It contextualizes RWBY's residual feelings about her mother's passing around her first major test at Beacon Academy, and while she isn't completely over Summer's death, she's able to overcome her shortcomings to pass this first exam and become a full-fledged student. The second track to discuss is the song played during the credits of Season 3, Divide, which I can comfortably say is my favorite song from the entirety of 2016 with its dark drive and haunting choral harmonies. Divide is a little bit different in how it works with the series as a whole, in that it acts almost as both a reflection on what's happened so far and a preview of things to come. The end of Season 3 is easily the darkest moment in the series so far, with the entire world falling to pieces and several main characters being killed off. Then, as the episode draws to a close and the stage is set for the next season, we drift over to a region of Remnant that we've never seen before and are finally confronted with the main villain of the series, Salem, who ends the episode with this line.
And I can't wait to watch you burn.
With the track starting immediately afterwards, Divide is now framed through Salem's perspective, with most of the point of view pronouns used throughout it designating the hunters, huntresses, and Ozpin himself as those who have been doing wrong this whole time and are now receiving their punishment for their wrongdoing. This puts the idea in our heads that Salem is not simply an I am evil, watch me do evil stuff villain, but instead someone who feels horribly wronged by something that happened in her past, most likely something relating to Ozpin. The lyrics themselves also show Salem's wisdom and intellect in the lines describing the power of man's resolve in the face of great trial and how she plans to extinguish their hope in order to make them easier to destroy. Additionally, it also gives us even stronger inclinations to believe the long prevailing notion that Ozpin has been hiding secrets from both the other characters and the audience throughout the entire series thus far. Words like misled and lie make up the bulk of this track's diction, and heavy-handed as it may be, it's extremely effective at conveying this idea in the song's relatively short runtime. The track also shows how Salem sees herself in a position of both strategic and moral superiority to Ozpin, referring to his actions as dark, sick, and cruel, and how it's impossible for Ozpin's followers to defeat her. And this sentiment is emotionally cemented by the bone-chilling choral bridge between the two verses of the song. Musically, the song conveys this constantly rising threat, starting with the 6/8 time of the first verse continuously falling forward under its own momentum, and each passing moment being more intense than the last, most acutely heard in the heart-piercing low brass attacks in the second verse, leading to the final lyrics of the track in which the last words of Salem's speech are pounded into our heads once more. Not only is this track a perfect summary of what has thematically happened in Season 3 and will permeate the narrative of Season 4, but it still manages to convey even more narrative that didn't make it into the main story. At the time, Divide had become one of my all-time favorite songs, and I thought it would take a miracle for RWBY to reach the same heights again. So imagine my surprise when Armed and Ready, the track accompanying the credits of Season 4, managed to grab me just as deeply and intensely. While not even close to a resolution yet, Season 4 ends with a much more hopeful and optimistic tone than Season 3, and the tone of Armed and Ready reflects as such, though not in the way you might think. Rather than portray the situation from RWBY's perspective, which would be expected since she and the remainder of Team Juniper were the main focus of this season, the song is instead written from the perspective of Yang, who spent the entire season recovering from her brief but crushing bout with Adam in the last season. Yang's presence in Season 4 is almost entirely focused on the effects of that encounter on her personality, resulting in scenes that are directly representative of PTSD, and we follow her as she regains her confidence and how she returns to her former badass self. At first, it might seem a bit odd that Yang gets to be the one to close out this season, since of the 4 members of Team RWBY, she ended up with the least screen time, but this might actually be part of the reason why. Most of Yang's arc throughout this season is conveyed via exposition and contemplation on past events and the current state of Yang's mind, rather than some kind of tangible achievement like the rest of Team RWBY. It's not that these elements were poorly executed or lacked substance, but they just didn't have some of the big standout moments that other character arcs from this season had, mostly because these kind of moments would make her arc feel overplayed or insincere. Because of her mostly subdued narrative, it's all the more just that she gets to be the one to sing us out this season. And by God does she sing us out. The most obvious answer to Salem's Divide would be something wholly triumphant and hope-filled, something inspiring in an almost shonen-esque my friends have my back kind of way. But this is Yang we're talking about, the badass bombshell with a fiery passion for battle who was coldly dismembered by her best friend's former lover turned abuser. To give her some kind of squeaky clean shonen battle anthem would be borderline juvenile. Instead, we get the same fiery passion and excess that we'd expect from Yang, filled with thoughts that are inspiring and hopeful, but also angry and ferocious. Armed and Ready is an overture to Yang's return to the front lines and her chance to call out Adam and everyone else who attacked Beacon to warn them that she is coming back for revenge, an idea that's explicitly stated in the lyrics. The song also remembers to capitalize on the more positive elements of Yang's personality, combining her flirtatious confidence and unbridled rage into a barrage of wordplay and imagery that takes this track to a whole new level. It's also important to note that this is the first time that a track that actually played during an episode of the series contained any cursing, which, based on Yang's state of mind, gives us a hint at where her character will be going from here. Miles and Monty often stated that they wanted RWBY to be a series that grows with its viewer, and this aspect, along with many others found throughout the series, are solid indicators of RWBY going through some kind of developing maturity. The musical structure of this track also adds new layers of emotion. The darker and heavier guitar riffs mirror some of those found in Divide, but are also complemented by a series of lighter and more triumphant chords, and the choral harmonies, along with Casey's own performance, create this all-engrossing, hyper-dense, almost sensual sound that just blasts you right in your face. I could go on and on about the specific intricacies of this track and how every single lyric adds more depth to the RWBY narrative, but this video is getting fairly long already, so perhaps I'll save that for another time. Through these 3 tracks I've talked about in detail, I hope that I've been able to convey my point that RWBY's narrative is contained within its soundtrack just as much as in its visual and script-based elements. In a sense, you could almost think of RWBY in terms of a musical, where songs inserted into the story contain essential plot elements that are crucial to understanding the main narrative. RWBY is a series that I'm intensely passionate about for a number of reasons, and the music is definitely one of the most significant, and I hope other companies learn to utilize the techniques that Rooster Teeth has been relying on not just in RWBY, but even since the beginnings of the company's first project. Thanks for watching, everyone. I've been sitting on this script for a while and I've been trying to think of a good time to put it out, so I figured the day before the premiere of Season 5 would be as good a time as any, and I hope you guys are just as excited for this new season as I am. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, be sure to like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on all my latest content. Share this video around with people you think might be interested, leave a comment below about what you thought and other topics you'd like me to cover in the future, check out my written content over at Digital Fox Media, and don't forget to follow me on Facebook and Twitter. My name is Ember, and I'll see you next time.